So, how was your week? Oh, God, you have no idea. Hello, friends. You ever have one of those days? For weeks or more? Well, about a week ago, I was helping my wife with GarageBand, which is Apple's digital recording software program. Neither of us have ever used it before. Now, I've used other digital recording software packages, more than one actually, and those were all very similar to each other, but GarageBand is not really like any of those, for whatever reason. My wife had this project that had a deadline in about a week. Of course, that's not all that was going on. I also had to shoot and edit an episode of Mr. Snayl's Wild Ride, and right in the middle of all that, we were going to be out of town for about 4 days. And on a personal note, I was close to finishing a short story that I've been working on for several months, and so I was very eager to finish it. Meanwhile, this is all happening during the fourth quarter. It's holiday season for many people. It's also winter settling in, and it settled in with a bang here in the Midwest. There's all sorts of the usual year-end business going on, pressures to deal with all that kind of stuff, family obligations, you all get it, right? And then, as fate would have it, several unforeseen emergencies all happened at once. And as you know, unforeseen emergencies means you have to change your plans up. And change is very bad for Mr. Snayl. Some of you may be familiar with the quadrant system that opposes importance and urgency and how we're really supposed to focus on things that are important, and many of us, Mr. Snayl included, get caught up in dealing with things that are urgent and likely not important. And of course, emergencies are one of those times. And Mr. Snayl got caught up in all these emergencies that are, of course, urgent, and then I don't get to deal with things that are important. This is sort of a day in the life or a week in the life of my whole system being blown out of the water by these emergencies. So I'll give you a few examples. I drive a Prius, which is a hybrid car, and as a result it has this very strange transmission, ignition, interactivity system. The car starts not with the turn of a key, but by the press of a button. It doesn't start by just pushing the button and it turns on. There's 3 different stages. You push the button and it's sort of the pre-ignition, and you push the button again. If you're not pressing on the brake, it's sort of the equivalent of like activating the battery in a normal car where you can turn on the radio and open and close the windows, that sort of thing. And then if you press it again while you're holding down the brake pedal, then the car actually starts. And it actually has 2 different batteries. It has the main sort of engine battery, and then it has a 12-volt puny battery that starts the car. You can still run down or jump that battery if you leave the headlights on when you turn the car off or something. It's like they built in a system for traditionalists who are dummies with their cars instead of not. I don't know. Anyway, that's beside the point. The other day, after I had parked it in the garage, I got in the car on the passenger side because I needed to get something out that I wouldn't be able to comfortably reach on the driver's side, and I had wanted to roll the passenger window down to vent out the car in the garage. And so instead of getting all the way in on the other side again, I just pressed the button once without pushing on the brake pedal to activate the battery system so that I could just roll the window down, and then I was going to press the button again to turn the car off, since I wouldn't be pushing on the brake pedal. This is the weird thing that happened that I don't understand. Well, of course, I pressed the button again and it wouldn't turn off. It stayed in this weird, what they call IG on mode. I couldn't turn the car off no matter what I did. I got in on the driver's side, I pushed on the pedal, I pressed the button, I took my foot off the pedal, I pressed the button a bunch of times. I couldn't turn the car off. But I also couldn't start the car to drive it by either putting the fob in the slot or pushing on the brake pedal or whatever. So the car is like on, but useless. So now I can't drive the car, but I have to deal with the car. The one other time that this happened, which was like 1.5 years ago in the summer, it took several days to resolve the problem. And this didn't fix the problem, it just sort of treated the symptom. And what I had to do, both that time and this time, leave the car on until the battery runs completely dead. That's very convenient. And also really great for the battery. That means that I can't do anything with the car or fix the problem for several days. And then I have to come back after like 4 or 5 days, attach a battery charger, and then the car will fire right up because the car thinks that it's still on. With luck, I press the button and the car turns off. Because somehow, even though it's still on, it got reset out of this weird locked mode. For purposes of the story, the car is not usable, right? Fine. It's winter and it's snowing to beat the band, and I can't drive the Prius in this horrible weather anyway. It's too low and it doesn't have, powerful whatever. I drove our beat up pickup truck instead, and it worked fine. one day. And then the next day I go and I get in the truck to start it, and it won't start. Now, it's not because the battery's dead. I turn the key and the radio comes on and the heat comes on and whatever. But I try to start it and it just goes click. It's not the starter. We just replaced it like a year ago. I don't know what's going on. Now, I'm not into cars. I'm not good with cars. I can do sort of one step above bare minimum maintenance to keep the cars running. But, So now, before we're out of town for the 4 days, aside from not having access to the Prius, now I've got to adjust my schedule to accommodate coordinating having the truck towed somewhere, which involves phone calls, which I hate. I have to coordinate repairs of the truck, which involves more phone calls, which I hate. We have to juggle our finances to cover the repairs and conceivably some deductible for the towing or the whatever. Despite owning 3 vehicles, which is a luxury in a house of 2 people, we're down to 1. So I have no car because my wife is going to be like out of town for another weekend and I'm stuck in the house. Now, where we live in the rural countryside in Michigan, that's a major deal. There's barely any sidewalks here. And the weather is horrible and it's accumulating snow and yada, yada, yada. Now that nightmare actually relates nicely to the third example, which is that I had to go to the pharmacy. The day that the truck was running, I dropped off a couple of scripts, and of course the meds were not in stock. They would be here tomorrow. Tomorrow comes, that's when the truck won't start, so I can't go to the pharmacy and pick up my meds. You know how I'm a basket case with my medication, and you've heard rumors about what a basket case I am without my medication, so we don't want that. The truck won't start, fine. This means that my wife has to pick up the meds for me. Fine. So now I've got to inconvenience her. She has a very tight schedule of her own. She happens to be out at an appointment or something. So she says fine. She goes to the pharmacy to pick up the meds. They're not ready. This happens all the time at our local pharmacy. The people that work there are very nice. They've helped us out numerous times in a series of jams and so forth. But the downside is that nothing is ever ready when they say it's going to be. Fine. So my wife has to wait for like an hour at the pharmacy. So that cuts into her schedule, which cuts into my schedule. Then when they're finally ready, they cost twice as much as the last time for reasons we don't understand. The pharmacist doesn't understand. They check and the insurance took a chunk out, but no one knows what the fuck is going on. That actually leads to my fourth example. My private health insurance plan is ending. I got notification from Blue Cross Blue Shield that because of the recent changes required by the healthcare reform in our country, the plan will be terminated by the time you're seeing this video. Now, I got that notice a couple of months ago, but you know how I love talking on the phone, etc. My biggest problem is actually, of course, prescription medication coverage, and they'll cover this class but not this class, and blah, 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 blah. So although lower cost of health insurance and better coverage is good, it still has been on and off one more thing to deal with. This time of year, the end of the year, fourth quarter, is always worse than any other for a lot of people, but especially for me. And it seems like, it may just be my imagination, but it seems like it gets worse every year than the previous year, even if I have fewer commitments than the previous year. And it always feels like I just can't ever catch up. More things just pile on top of each other, and it's always accumulating faster than I can dig out from under it. And I know that most people have to deal with these struggles all the time. That I'm not special in that regard. Except that, even though I don't want to, I wind up drilling down a lot further than most people, and obsessing over the mechanics and the specifics of how it's all going to play out, and I get very overwhelmed very quickly. So it's hard. But I'm trying to keep perspective. And I hope that you out there try to keep your perspective too, as the year's end approaches. Give each other some space. You know, we're all freaking out, and we're all short-tempered, and we all need a break. And try to give yourself a break, too. There are some changes afoot for the wild ride in the next year, so be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. You're not going to want to miss those. But in the meantime, have some happy holidays. Peace out, my brothers and sisters. We'll see you next time. For me, this is very, very true. So while all of that was going on, I also had to shoot and edit an episode of Mr. Snayl's Wild Ride, and it was gonna be here we go. Here we go. Now, while that was happening, I also had to shoot an epit. And me personally, did I just say personally twice? I also was near the end of, damn it. Some of you have probably heard about the quadrant of urgency versus importance, and a lot of us get trapped in a diaphragm. So I'll list some of the examples and how they blow my whole, some of you may be familiar with the whole quadrant diaphragm. I almost said diaphragm again. What is going on? So now the click, 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 click.